Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. We love to get into the nitty-gritty of all things business and tech, so today, well, let's talk digital transformation.
Digital transformation.
It's one of those buzzwords, everyone's talking about it, but what's the reality beyond the hype?
Right, right.
Well, lucky for us, we've got this insightful article by Imad Lodi. It's called Why Successful Transformation Requires More Than Just Technology, and it dropped just last week, November 8th, 2024.
Oh, I saw that one. Really makes you think.
It really does, and I think anyone listening who's ever felt like their company got a little too excited about some shiny new tech without thinking it through, this one's for you.
Yeah, it's so easy to fall into that trap thinking the latest gadget or software is a magic bullet.
The technology trap, as Lodi calls it.
Exactly. But as he points out, that approach so often backfires.
So let's unpack this technology trap a bit. I bet everyone listening has encountered this at some point. Maybe you've even lived it firsthand. It's that rush to implement new tech without really considering the people, the processes, the culture even.
Oh, absolutely. You can't just slap on a new system and expect everything to magically fall into place.
Right. It's like, I don't know, trying to bake a cake with all the fancy tools, but no recipe or understanding of ingredients.
Perfect analogy. You end up with a mess, not a masterpiece. And that's where the human element comes in, you see.
So neglecting the people side of things is, what, a recipe for disaster during a digital transformation?
Precisely. Lodi nails it in the article. He gives 3 solid reasons why this is crucial. First one, change management.
Change management. Sounds kind of formal, but isn't it really just about acknowledging that people naturally resist change? I mean, think about it. Change can be scary. It shakes things up, pushes us outside our comfort zones, sometimes even makes us worry about job security.
All very true, and psychologically speaking, it makes perfect sense. Our brains like stability, predictability. So when change hits us, especially at work, we tend to push back a little.
So it's not enough to just announce, hey, new system coming. You've got to explain the why, the benefits, and how people will be supported through the transition.
Absolutely. You have to bring people along on the journey, not just spring it on them last minute, because if they feel left in the dark or worse, like their concerns are ignored, they're much more likely to resist.
Makes total sense. Communication is key. So what's the second reason the human element is so important in digital transformation?
Well, the second one Lodi highlights is skill development. And this is where a lot of companies trip up. They invest in the coolest tech, but then fail to invest in the people who will actually be using it.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's like buying a top-of-the-line race car and then expecting someone who's never driven before to win the Indy 500.
Exactly. You've got to give your workforce the skills and knowledge they need, not just to operate the new tech, but to really thrive in this new environment. And it goes beyond just basic training. It's about ongoing support, mentoring, opportunities to keep learning.
So upskilling your workforce is as critical as upgrading your tech stack.
Got it. Now, Lodi mentioned 3 big reasons why the human factor is so vital in digital transformation. What's that third one?
The third one, and probably the most overlooked, is cultural alignment. See, you can have the most cutting-edge technology in the world, but if it clashes with your company's existing culture and values, it's going to backfire.
That's fascinating. So even if technology is fantastic on its own, it needs to work in harmony with the human environment it's entering.
Precisely. Lodi gives a great example. Imagine a company known for its collaborative, team-oriented spirit suddenly implements a super individualistic performance tracking system. What happens?
Ooh, yeah, I can see that creating a ton of friction. People would probably feel like their core values are being ignored, and it could even hurt teamwork and morale. Exactly. It's trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. The technology itself might be fine, but if it doesn't fit the culture, it'll do more harm than good.
So companies have to think about the cultural context when making technology choices. It's not just about functionality, it's about fit.
You nailed it. And that's where so many companies go wrong. They're so focused on technical capabilities that they forget about the human impact and the need for cultural alignment.
Okay, so we've talked about this technology trap and these 3 key reasons: change management, skill development, cultural alignment, why companies need to put people first during these transformations. But what does that actually look like in practice? What can companies do to get this right?
Well, the good news is Lodi doesn't leave us hanging with just theory. He gives some really practical advice, and that's what we'll dive into next. So Lodi's point is, instead of rushing into implementing tech, companies should, take a breath. First, really define their core values, their goals.
So before you even think about which software to buy or systems to upgrade, You need to be crystal clear on what you're actually trying to achieve and what principles are going to guide those decisions.
Exactly. It's like going back to basics. What do we stand for? What impact do we want to make? What kind of culture do we want to build within the company?
Because if you don't have a solid grasp on those core values, it's easy to get swept up in the hype, right? Chasing the newest tech trends without ever stopping to think if they actually fit your long-term goals.
Exactly. You can end up chasing shiny objects that lead you nowhere, implementing tech that, well, it undermines your values or disengages your employees.
So how do companies make sure their tech choices actually align with their deeper values? Sounds like a pretty tough challenge.
It is, but Lodi gives us a sort of roadmap to navigate it. He talks about the importance of engaging employees early on and often throughout this whole transformation process.
Makes sense. After all, it's the employees who'll be using this technology day in and day out. They're the ones on the front lines, so they're going to have the best insights into what works and what doesn't.
Exactly. And when you involve them in the decision making, you not only tap into those insights, but also build buy-in. It helps reduce that resistance to change we talked about.
Like you said earlier, bring people along in the journey.
Right. So once you have a grasp on your values and you've started engaging your employees, Lodi emphasizes investing in training and development.
And I'm guessing this means more than just, teaching people how to use the new software.
Oh, absolutely. It's about giving them the skills they need to actually thrive in this new digitally transformed environment. Sure, there's technical training, but it could also be things like problem solving, communication skills, or even just learning how to adapt to change better.
So invest in the whole person, not just the technical side of their job.
Precisely. And then the last thing Lodi really stresses is communication throughout the entire transformation process. And we're not just talking about sending a few emails or holding a town hall meeting.
You mean like constant communication, keeping employees informed about what's happening, why it's happening, how it affects them.
Exactly. Be transparent, be authentic, be responsive to their concerns, create a culture where people feel comfortable sharing their feedback, their ideas.
Because ultimately, digital transformation isn't just about like plugging in new tech. It's about transforming how your company works, how your employees work, even how your company interacts with the world.
That's a great way to put it. It's about using technology to reach your goals, sure, but also to improve your company culture, to create a more engaged and empowered workforce.
It's about a lot more than just the tech itself then. It's about the people using it and why they're using it. Now, Lodi's article focuses on the company's perspective. But what about the individual? What can our listeners who are probably going through their own transformations take away from this?
That's a great question. And I think one of the biggest takeaways, whether you're a CEO or just starting out, is this. Technology is a tool. It's not a solution in and of itself.
So just like companies need to be mindful of how they use technology, individuals need to be intentional about how they let technology shape their lives.
Absolutely. Be proactive, not reactive. Ask yourself, how can I use technology to improve my life, to reach my goals, to live by my values?
Instead of letting technology, control your priorities or your attention, we've talked a lot about aligning technology with your values, both for companies and individuals. But how do you actually do that? It's easy to say you want to live a more mindful life, but how do you translate that into action?
Well, I think it starts with self-awareness, taking time to really think about what's important to you, what you want to achieve, what kind of life you want to build.
Like define your own personal mission statement, your own set of core values.
Exactly. And once you have those values, you can start looking at your technology choices through that lens. Ask yourself, is this app or this device helping me live a more fulfilling life? Is it good for my well-being? Or is it just distracting me from what really matters?
Using your values as a filter to make smarter choices about how you use tech.
Right. And it's also about setting boundaries.
Yeah.
We're constantly bombarded with information and notifications. It's so easy to get sucked into social media or spend hours scrolling on our phones.
So being intentional about your tech use also means being intentional about when you disconnect, right? Making space for things that truly nourish you, whether it's time with loved ones, a creative hobby, or just enjoying nature.
Exactly. Finding that balance between the digital world and the real world, the virtual and the tangible.
Because ultimately, technology should empower us to live better, more meaningful lives, not something that controls us or makes us feel worse.
And that brings us to another point Lodi makes, the importance of leadership in all of this.
Because even with the best intentions and the perfect technology, things can still go wrong without strong leadership.
Oh, for sure. Lodi says leaders need to be more than just cheerleaders for change. They need to be actively involved in shaping the culture, communicating the vision, supporting employees when things get tough, which they will.
So it's about leading by example, living those values they're trying to promote, creating a safe environment where people feel comfortable experimenting, learning, and growing.
Exactly. And recognizing that transformation isn't always smooth sailing. There will be setbacks, challenges, times when you need to adjust course.
So it's not just about having a plan. It's about being flexible, being resilient enough to adapt that plan as you go.
Yes. And it's about empowering others to take ownership of the process. Transformation can't be a top-down thing. It has to be a team effort involving people at every level.
Which brings us back to communication and engagement. If you want people invested in change, they need to feel like they're part of the solution, not just being told what to do.
Exactly. And that might require a change in mindset for some leaders, moving away from that command and control style and toward a more collaborative, participatory approach.
Where you're not just giving orders, but you're inviting people to help create the future of the company.
Yes. And that's when things get really exciting. When you tap into the collective wisdom and creativity of everyone, that's when you can really see transformative results.
Okay, we've covered a lot today. The technology trap, the human factor, aligning technology with values, and the role of leadership. But it feels like we've just scratched the surface.
There's always more to explore.
Right. And Lodi's article is a great starting point. He's written a lot about digital transformation, so I'm sure there are even more insights to discover in his other work.
Absolutely. And for our listeners who want to dive deeper, I definitely recommend checking out his other articles.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. But we'll be back soon to explore even more fascinating topics with you. Thanks for listening. You know, this whole conversation has really got me thinking. We talk about digital transformation like it's this big, unstoppable force, but we don't often stop to think about our own role in it.
Yeah, it's true. We see technology as something happening to us, not something we can actually shape or control.
And that's what's so powerful about Lodi's article, I think. It's not just about companies using technology better. It's about how we can take charge and use it to create the kind of future we actually want.
It's a responsibility we all share, not just CEOs and executives.
Because at the end of the day, technology is a tool. Like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
It all comes down to the choices we make, the values we put first, the actions we take.
So here's my challenge to everyone listening. Don't just be a passive consumer of technology. Be a part of shaping how it develops, how it impacts the world.
Ask yourself, what kind of future do you want? How should technology fit into that? And what can you do with your own skills and influence to make a positive difference?
Because the future isn't something that just happens to us. We create it together. So let's make it a future that's worth building, a future where technology helps us connect, create, and build a better world. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. We hope you found this deep dive insightful. Catch you on the next one.